The mysterious stranger in the wilderness. Lost in the wild. The mysterious stranger in the wilderness. Lost in the wild. The dense forest stretched endlessly in all directions. Towering pines and ancient oaks loomed over the narrow dirt trail as Daniel Carter trudged forward, his breath misting in the crisp autumn air. He had been hiking alone for 3 days, searching for a remote waterfall he had read about in an old travel journal. But now, as the sun dipped below the horizon, he realized he was lost. He checked his map again, but nothing matched the terrain around him. His compass spun erratically, as if the wilderness itself had turned against him. Panic crept into his thoughts, but he pushed it down. He had to find shelter before nightfall. Just as he was about to set up camp, a sound echoed through the trees, a branch snapping underfoot. Daniel froze, his pulse quickening. "Hello," he called out. Silence. Then, from the shadows, a figure emerged. The stranger appears. The man stood tall and still, wrapped in a long, dark coat, his face partially obscured by the brim of a weathered hat. His piercing eyes glowed faintly in the dim light. "You're lost," the stranger stated, his voice deep and calm. Daniel hesitated before nodding. "Yeah. I was trying to find the Silver Falls, but my map doesn't match up." The stranger studied him for a long moment before nodding toward the trees. "Come with me. You won't last the night alone." Something about the man unsettled Daniel, but he had no better option. Reluctantly, he followed the stranger deeper into the wilderness. The hidden cabin. After what felt like an hour of walking, they arrived at a small, hidden cabin nestled between the trees. Smoke curled from a stone chimney, and the warm glow of lanterns flickered through the windows. The stranger pushed open the wooden door and gestured for Daniel to enter. Inside, the cabin was simple but cozy. A fire crackled in the hearth, casting long shadows on the wooden walls. Shelves lined with old books and jars of dried herbs filled the space, and the air smelled of pine and something unfamiliar. "Who are you?" Daniel asked, his curiosity overcoming his caution. The man removed his hat, revealing sharp features and graying hair. "Name's Elias," he said. "And you're lucky I found you." Daniel frowned. "What do you mean?" Elias stirred the fire with an iron poker before answering. "This forest isn't just trees and trails. People get lost here, and some never leave. Secrets of the wilderness." Daniel shifted uneasily in his chair. "Are you saying there's something dangerous out there?" Elias nodded. "Something old. Something that doesn't take kindly to strangers." Daniel scoffed. "Like a bear?" Elias' gaze darkened. "No. Like something worse." He walked over to a dusty bookshelf and pulled out a leather-bound book. Flipping through the pages, he pointed to an old illustration of a shadowy figure with glowing eyes, standing among the trees. "They call it the Watcher," Elias murmured. "It's been here for centuries, guarding something hidden deep in these woods." Daniel leaned closer, studying the image. "What is it guarding?" Elias closed the book. "No one knows. But those who go looking for it disappear." A warning ignored. Despite Elias' warning, Daniel's curiosity burned. That night, while Elias slept, Daniel slipped out of the cabin and into the moonlit forest. He had to see for himself. The woods were eerily silent. No wind, no rustling leaves, just an unnatural stillness. As he ventured deeper, he felt unseen eyes watching him. Then, a low whisper floated through the air, sending a chill down his spine. Suddenly, the ground gave way beneath him, and he tumbled into darkness. The forbidden chamber. When Daniel opened his eyes, he was lying in a massive underground cavern. Strange symbols glowed faintly on the walls. In the center of the chamber stood an ancient stone altar, covered in moss and time-worn carvings. And standing beside it was the Watcher. Tall and shrouded in black mist, its glowing eyes bore into Daniel's soul. It didn't move, but he could feel its presence pressing against his mind. A voice echoed in his head. "You were warned? Fear paralyzed him. But before the creature could act, a sudden flash of light filled the chamber. Elias. Chapter 7, Escape or Fate. Elias stood at the entrance, holding an old lantern that blazed with an unnatural fire. "You shouldn't have come here," he said, his voice firm but not unkind. The watcher hissed and recoiled from the light. Elias grabbed Daniel's arm and pulled him toward a narrow passage. As they fled through the winding tunnel, the whispers of the watcher faded into the darkness. When they finally emerged back into the forest, Daniel collapsed, gasping for breath. Elias sighed. Curiosity is a dangerous thing. Daniel looked up at him. "What is that thing?" Elias didn't answer right away. Instead, he gazed into the trees, his expression unreadable. A guardian. And a prisoner. The mysterious truth. Back at the cabin, Elias handed Daniel a warm drink and sat across from him. "You should leave in the morning," he said. "Forget what you saw." Daniel frowned. "But Elias cut him off with a sharp look. "Some things are better left unknown." Silence filled the room. Eventually, exhaustion took over, and Daniel drifted into uneasy sleep. By dawn, Elias was gone. The cabin, the books, even the fire, it had all vanished as if it had never been there. Daniel stood alone in the clearing, the wind whispering through the trees. Had it all been real? Or had the wilderness played tricks on his mind? As he turned to leave, he spotted something in the dirt, a single footprint that wasn't his. The mark left behind. Daniel didn't stop walking until he was miles away from where the cabin had once stood. His head throbbed with unanswered questions. He had seen the watcher, felt its presence, heard its warning. And Elias. Elias had vanished like a ghost. As he reached the edge of the forest, Daniel pulled out his phone. No signal. He had no proof of what had happened. No photos. No recordings. Just the memory of those glowing eyes and the whispers in the dark. Then, something caught his attention. On his forearm, just beneath his sleeve, was a faint, black mark, like the symbol he had seen glowing in the underground chamber. His breath caught in his throat. It hadn't been a dream. The shadow that follows. Back in the city, Daniel tried to return to normal life. He told himself it was over, that the watcher was locked away in the depths of the forest. But the mark on his arm never faded. And then, the whispers started. At first, they were barely audible, a distant murmur when he was alone at night. But soon, they grew louder. Shadows seemed to move in his apartment, flickering in the corners of his vision. And sometimes, in the silence of the night, he felt something watching him. One evening, he woke up gasping for breath, his chest heavy as if an unseen force was pressing down on him. In the darkness, he swore he saw those glowing eyes staring at him from the foot of his bed. Seeking answers. Desperate for answers, Daniel began researching local legends. He scoured archives, visited old libraries, and spoke to historians. But the watcher was never mentioned in any recorded history, except for one obscure passage in an old, handwritten journal from the 1800s. The guardian does not chase, but it does not forget. Once marked, one belongs to the forest. To run is to delay. To return is to know. Daniel felt a chill run down his spine. Was that what Elias had meant? Had he been marked? There was only one way to find out. They returned to the wilderness. Daniel packed his gear and drove back to the edge of the forest. As he stepped into the trees, the air felt heavier, thicker. The wind carried whispers, just like before. The deeper he walked, the more the forest changed. Trees seemed older, their roots twisting unnaturally. The path ahead seemed to shift, guiding him somewhere he knew he wasn't meant to go. And then he saw it. The cabin. It was back. The same smoke curled from the chimney, the same warm light flickered through the windows. As if it had never disappeared. Heart pounding, Daniel stepped inside. The truth revealed. Elias was waiting for him. "You came back," he said, his tone unreadable. Daniel pulled up his sleeve, revealing the mark. Tell me what this means. Elias sighed, rubbing his temples. It means the forest isn't done with you. Daniel clenched his fist. What is the Watcher? Why did it mark me? Elias studied him for a long moment before speaking. The Watcher is the guardian of something ancient, something buried deep beneath this land. It doesn't hunt people, unless they go where they shouldn't. Daniel's mind raced. The chamber, he whispered. Elias nodded. You saw something you weren't supposed to see. And now, you belong to it. A choice to make. Daniel felt his stomach twist. How do I get rid of it? Elias shook his head. You don't. There has to be a way. Elias looked at him, his expression grim. There is. But you won't like it. Daniel swallowed hard. Tell me. Elias stood and opened an old wooden chest, pulling out a rusted dagger with strange carvings along the blade. You have two choices, he said. Run for the rest of your life, knowing it will always be near, or return to the chamber and finish what you started. Daniel's breath caught. Finish what? Elias placed the dagger in his hand. You'll see. The final descent. With no other option, Daniel followed Elias back into the forest. The night was eerily silent, as if the world was holding its breath. When they reached the hidden cavern, the entrance was already open, as if it had been waiting for him. Daniel stepped inside. The air was thick, electric. The symbols along the walls glowed faintly, and at the center of the chamber, the Watcher stood waiting. Its voice filled his mind. You have returned? Daniel gripped the dagger. What do you want from me? The Watcher's eyes burned brighter. To choose. Elias whispered, do what must be done. Daniel hesitated. And then, he stepped forward. The forest held its breath. And the choice was made.
Don't forget to like and subscribe.